Welcome to Amateur Redneck Workshop. I'm Harold, and today I'm going to start on a little project that I had on the back burner for practically forever, and that's a die holder for the tailstock of my lathe. And possibly at some time I'll get some good use out of it. I was every time I come up to do this, I think, well, yeah, but next time around we'll do that. Next time and next time. So here lately I was at an auction and I got some nice Marsh Taper 2 drill shanks, whatever. They're threaded on one end to hold a chuck. They're Jacob's chuck holders. And I thought, well, that would be just fine. That'll fit in the tailstock really good. And all I got to do is thread a little shaft for the thing and make the die holder. So I decided I can't keep on delaying this, and so I got to examining these little number 2 Marsh Taper chuck holders, and son of a gun, they have a 16 threads per inch, 5/8 by 16 thread thread on them. Now who does that? Well, nobody but the chuck people, as far as I can tell. It's not exactly a common thread. I got a couple of taps to do it, but they were incredibly expensive and hard to find. So I guess I don't need any external threads, so I didn't buy a die, which would sort of fit in with the project, I guess. Anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to try to build this tailstock die holder. So let's just get on with it. That's the culprit there that required the odd threads. But I've got several of these now, and I thought, well, we'll put them to use. And so I had to, at great expense, to come up with a 5/8 16 tap. I guess I could have cut the internal threads with a threading tool. I've got an internal threading tool, but somehow I wanted the tap, so there. I guess that's the real story. Tap drill for this is supposed to be a 9/16. Closest I've got is 37/64, so it'll be like maybe a 50% thread instead of a 72. So not a big deal. We'll just drill her and stuff her with a tap. A little fast. That'll make plenty of threads. Oh. We'll slow her way down. I think I started with the bottom tap. Well, gotta clean it out. Well, I want to take this thing down to 800 thousandths, but the live center is interfering with the tool bit down on that end. There's just not enough room for it to get down to the metal. So I cut that little groove in the center. It's 800 thousandths, and I can take one cutting tool from one angle and cut to one end, and then I can start in the middle and cut back toward the tool post with a tool of another angle and match up the surface when I get through. So that's my solution to not having room up against the live center. Okay, so a little polishing with Scotch-Brite. Brought it down to $7.99, and so I'll make my bore 800 thousandths for the piece that slides over it, and that should be a reasonably good fit, I think. Maybe I'll go, yeah, 800 thousandths. That'll give me a thousandth clearance. That should be more than enough. Within a half a thousandth, I think. Too bad I couldn't do that really fast. That's about as close as I can zoom in and stay focused, but I've got a little crack here and there, and that's what happened to these guys previously. Although I didn't have these, when I sold the lathe to a guy and then a year later I bought it back, these things came back with it. Apparently this one's a good one. I don't see any, cracks in it, but there's two of these that are already starting to crack and are going to need to be replaced. So at least I've got these to go by to possibly make some new pieces. Hopefully I can buy something with a square hole in it. If not, I'll have to machine it. But I'd better get busy because I've got one spare and I've got two starting to fail. The piece that this fella here is going to slide over is 800 thousandths, well, 0.799. So I'm drilling this hole with increasingly larger drill bits, and the last one I used was a 7/16, and it was the first one long enough to go all the way through. So I'm going to drill up pretty near to 3/4, and then I'll try to work the rest out with the boring bar in the hopes of making the hole pretty well straight and true. We'll see how that comes out. I don't often use these taper shank drills, but when I do, they do a good job. Too tight. I probably should have had another step between this one and the last one, but we'll see. This is 11/16, and this is as big as I'm going. Alright, I've got the rotary table on the little grizzly, and my next step will be to try to cut a hex in the end of that tube there that I've made, and I'll do it without a whole lot of complicated calculations. We'll use redneck math. And of course, before I get started, I've got this little guy over here on the crank. I don't know if you can see the crank, but this guy here, when I was making the gears, I pulled it off of there and completely forgot that there's a little 6mm key in it. Well, there was a little 6mm key in it, it's more like it because it's not there now. And I ordered some key stock, so before I even get started on this, I'm going to take the little handle off and put the key in there. What we have here is a centering indicator, and it's got a little curved rod like that sticking down into the cylinder so that, you know, it'll move this, it'll touch the outside at all times. And I turn on the machine, and you can see that it shows how far off center that I might be. I wasn't just a long ways off at first. The previous use of this tells me that just because I'm close doesn't mean it's going to be easy to get that last thousandth out of it, you know. First time I ever saw this, I believe, was on Tubal Cain's channel, Mr. Pete 222, and I was totally fascinated, and so I had to get one. And I'm going to try to put it in on the zero. We'll see. By zero, I mean zero movement. Although I could move the zero number over there closer to it. Looks like I've got about 1,000th to go. The idea of this is to get me dead on in both X and Y directions. That's 1,000th total run out there. It means I'm half 1,000th off of being in the dead center, which is probably not important for what we're making here. But I'm going to just play around with it, see if I can get any closer. Probably not. I think I'm going to take that because I could probably play this all day and not get any closer than a half 1,000. This is the guy I had down in the hole, so it was definitely touching the sides. Alright, I'm going to make a hex in this piece of metal, and the outside, the points, the farthest parts out of this hex are 1.150, which I came up with measuring across the points, them being exactly opposite each other. And that could be 1,000th or two off due to the fact I used a caliper. But anyway, I'm going to tell this thing to drill a 6-hole bolt circle. Alright, so we'll go to the bolt circle part. And he wants to know the radius. I've got that written down. Hold on. Alright, the radius is 0. You always have to start this thing with 0.575. Okay, so enter that. Now then, starting angle, we'll start at 0. That's as good a place as any. Enter that. And put the end angle. Okay, the end angle is 300. And put the most number, which is going to be 6. Okay, so to make hole 1, I've got to move the X over to 0.5750. Alright, so I've got X locked. I'm not sure why I did that, but I did it. So I'll unlock X, and went the wrong way. And we'll just back it down until it reads 0. And I'm sure that Mr. Pete would do this better, but there you are. Alright, now that I've got that on 0, I'm going to come right over here, and I'm going to make just a little peck with it, just to make sure that I come back and I've got them all laid out correctly. So we'll come over here. Just a tiny little dot now. Alright, it's right there. So next thing we'll do is we'll tell it that we want to go to the next hole. So let's see, I believe I hit this guy. Hole 2, I've got to take X to 2878. Alright, so whoa, went too far. Alright, now we got to move Y. Until we come down to 0. Alright, so then we'll come over here. We're going to peck another little hole in this thing. More like just a little dent. Oops. Sorry about whacking you guys like that. But now we've got another little dent there. And I'm going to do like this all the way around, and then I'm going to compare it to an actual hex to see if all the points line up. I know this is extremely paranoid, but that's the kind of guy I am. You know, what they say, it's easy to be paranoid when everybody's out to get you. Alright, when comparing the little holes to a real sure enough hex, they all line up just perfect. I figured they would, but you know, I like to double check a couple of times. Okay, so I let the DRO guide me around, and I drilled a 1/2 inch deep, 6 little holes just exactly where I'd made my marks. Now get the drill chuck the drill bit out of there and put in a 3/16 end mill, which is the smallest one I've got. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut the flats, and I'm just going to move it over one time to the right spot, and then I'm going to cut a flat, lift it up, turn the rotary table until I get lined up, cut the next flat, and I'm going to do that 6 times. Instead of cutting on one side and then going over and cutting on the other, I'm just going to line up one time on the edge, and we'll do all of them just like that. Okay? Alright, so since there's 6 flats on this thing, they're about a 1/2 inch long on each flat. So I'm going to start over here about 1/4 of an inch and move a 1/2 inch over that away towards the hole. And starting on the hole on the left, end up on the hole on the right. We'll see how that works out. So I'm just running the thing from -160 to +160. And I'm cutting about 40 thousandths of depth each time. So it means it takes several cuts before I get a 1/2 inch deep. I'm going to do this 5 more times. No need to film all that.